Today I am going to discuss about classification and laboratory diagnosis of hemolytic anemia. This is the last topic among anemia. So far you have learned about microcytic hypochromic anemia, includes iron deficiency anemia, some macrocytic anemia, that is B12 deficiency and folate deficiency anemia, and now we are going to discuss about various hemolytic anemias. This is basically an introductory lecture, so we are not going to analyze major hemoglobinopathies like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia because that will be your separate lecture. So today I am going to give you some basic introduction of hemolytic anemia, how and what hemolytic anemia is, then what are the classifications of anemia, and very important thing, how to differentiate extravascular from intravascular hemolysis. So far we have learned basic thing like what is hemolysis. So it is the disorder in which red cells are destroyed faster than bone marrow produce it. So there is definitely destruction of the RBCs, right? We can say increase the rate of lysis of the RBCs as compared to lifespan of the RBCs. Now, this hemolytic process may involve two things. One, either in the erythroid precursors, or they may occur due to lysis of red cell alone. Now, erythroid precursors, like if there is any deficiency of globin chain synthesis, just like in case of thalassemia, or we can say some mutations that we can see in sickle cell anemia that are grouped under hemoglobinopathies. And second group, that is the lysis of red cell alone, like in case of RBC membrane defect as in hereditary spherocytosis, pyruvate kinase deficiency, G6PD deficiency, like enzymes. Once there is congenital deficiency of these enzymes, there is definitive lysis of red cells alone, and thus in turn leads to hemolysis. Start with a case: a young 19 years male patient with a complaint of giddiness, weakness and pallor. Systemic examination reveals splenomegaly with yellow colored sclera. Now investigations. On RBC's morphology, there is severe normochromic normocytic anemia. Now this word is very important. Though hemoglobin level is 6.4, quite normal, quite abnormal. We can say severe anemia, but still the normochromic and normocytic morphology. So this is the one important significant sign in case of hemolytic anemia. Second thing is reticulocyte count, that is 12.2. So it is again far increased because normally it is within 2.5 percentage. Now blood film. So you can see various abnormal RBCs, like this is nucleated RBCs, right? This is again nucleated RBCs. These two are polychromatic RBCs. Here there is mild or faint discoloration. Here it is some kind of intense discoloration. So there is polychromatic RBCs there. In this figure you can see such kind of fragmented RBCs over here, or you can see over here. So such kind of RBC destruction is going on. Such kind of blister cell or bite cells are there. So such kind of polychromatic RBCs, destructive RBCs with NRBCs, that is nucleated RBCs, a typical blood picture of hemolytic anemia. With biochemical markers, say for example bilirubin 2.5, so again slight increase, LDH very much increased, it is greater than 200, 2000 in fact, and heptoglobin level, that is decrease. Now this again indicative of hemolytic process. Whenever there is hemolysis, what obvious bilirubin get increased, but LDH is far greater increase, and heptoglobin get lowered because this hemoglobin once get RBC get destructed, this liberated iron or hemoglobin component, they mix up with heptoglobin and they get squeezed in the reticuloendothelial system. That's why heptoglobin level get decreased. So now guess is but obvious hemolytic anemia. But which anemia is there? For that we have to go for examination of blood smear, and this is very important slide among this lecture. This is the single important slide for differential diagnosis of various hemolytic anemia. આપણે આટલા બ્લડ પિક્ચર ઉપરથી ખબર પડે કે there is hemolytic picture is there, but still we have to examine each cells on peripheral smear. Like for example, if there is spherocytes, more number of spherocytes is there, and go for direct anti-globulin test, that is cum test. If it is positive, suggestive of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. If spherocytes with Coombs test negative, you have to stamp it as hereditary spherocytosis. Second constant cells observed on peripheral smear is cystocytes, and whenever you find cystocytes, it is again a fragmented abnormal shapes of RBCs. Think about microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, and that includes three group of disorders: TTP, that is thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura; HUS, that is hemolytic uremic syndrome; and DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation. So once you find cystocytes, think about these three hemolytic disorders, and they are collectively known as microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. And if you find microcytic hypochromic cells, think about thalassemia first, because whenever you see hemolytic picture with microhypo cells, that is definitely thalassemia. Go for HB electrophoresis. Once you find sickle cell, that is definitive sickle cell disorders, again confirmed by HB electrophoresis or HPLC. Once you find bite cell, that is the characteristic cells for G6PD deficiency. This is very frequently asked MCQ in the past. Bite cell or blister cells seen in G6PD deficiency. Once you find malarial parasite, that is again produce hemolysis. And if you have normocytic normochromic RBCs, that is normal red cells, right? But still there is chance to have some hemolytic disease like PNH, that is paroxysmal noctular hemoglobinuria, G6PD deficiency, and certain other hemoglobinopathies. So this is the classical differential diagnosis in case of hemolytic anemia on the basis of peripheral blood smear examination. So very important slide for you people. The same thing, whenever you think a feature of hemolysis, some biochemical abnormalities like increased bilirubin, increased LDH, increased retic, decreased heptoglobulin, these four signs, constant finding NRBCs is there, positive urinary hemosiderin urobilinogen. On blood film, spherocyte is there, again go for Coombs test, positive autoimmune etiology, negative hereditary spherocytosis. No spherocytes, think about malaria, some other enzymopathies, and if there is fragmented RBCs, it is microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. So these are the again a flow chart for hemolysis. Now peripheral blood findings in case of hemolytic anemia. What are the blood picture in case of hemolytic anemia? First is polychromasia. Polychromatic RBC means there is individual discoloration, abnormal discoloration of different RBCs. Nucleated RBCs, that is normoblast, early, intermediate, and late normoblast. Three stages are there. Normoblasts are nothing but reticulocyte cells, but on peripheral smear it is looked like polychromatic RBCs are looked like retic on retic smear. Thrombocytosis, again there is increased platelet count due to reactive bone marrow hyperplasia. Neutrophilia with shift to left, and some shape abnormality of the RBCs like spirocytes, target cells, sickle cells, acanthocytes, and fragmented red cells, that is cystocytes. So these are the abnormal blood findings in case of hemolytic anemia. If you going to ask about any hemolytic anemia like thal minor, sickle cell, hereditary spherocytosis, or autoimmune hemolytic anemias, all kind of anemia, blood picture will remain same. If there is sickle cell may be specific. If there is hereditary spherocytosis, spherocytes is specific. If hereditary elliptocytosis, that elliptocyte is specific. But these first four findings are almost similar to all hemolytic anemia. Now regarding RBC indices, but obvious there is anemia, low MCV and MCHC, but it is in case of particularly in case of intravascular hemolysis where microhypochromic picture is there. But in case of megaloblastic anemia, again it is grouped under hemolytic. Like in that case, there is high MCV. And in case of spherocytosis, that is hereditary spherocytosis, high MCH as well as high MCHC. So that is again suggestive of hereditary spherocytosis. So far, we have learned about RBC morphology and now RBC indices. Next, what is what we can say, what are the pitfall of hemolytic anemia? Once there is destruction of RBC is going on, bone marrow try to accelerate the production of RBCs then in the form of erythroid hyperplasia and reticulocytosis. That's why there is increased retic count whenever there is destruction of RBC. So retic count abnormally high, always think about hemolytic anemia first. This is the rule in your practice. You think about this thing in future also. So again, a flowchart of evaluation of normocytic anemia. As I told you earlier, sometimes there is no microhypochromic picture. So normocytic anemia always go for retic count, and if retic count is increased, it always tempt as hemolytic anemia. But sometimes it is normal, even low. So try to rule out underlying chronic diseases like chronic TB, chronic renal disorders, anemia of chronic disease, that is ACD. If they are present, then it is termed as ACD, that is anemia of chronic disease. But it is not. No underlying disease is there. Go for bone marrow examination. And if you find normal, again it is termed as anemia of chronic disease. And if there are some abnormal findings, just in case of myelofibrosis anemia, aplastic anemia, you will find some myelofibrosis, then you can think about this kind of anemias. So whenever you see normocytic normochromic anemia, rule out hemolytic anemia on the basis of retic count. And if it is normal, go for some chronic disorders. If there is no history of any chronic disorders, go for bone marrow evaluation. So this is how we can evaluate normocytic anemias. Now discuss about some biochemical parameters. Serum bilirubin, a very important consistent finding, but nowadays it is not that much sensitive, because though it is good marker for extravascular hemolysis, but still uh, we can say more than 5, it is unusual in hemolytic anemia. And if it is persist, we can say it is coexisting with some hepatic dysfunction. That's why it is little bit non-specific. But yeah, it is definitely get increase. Now haptoglobin is very sensitive glycoprotein that is synthesized by liver and act as a squenger by binding free hemoglobin that released during RBC destruction. Now these hemoglobin haptoglobin complex, they are get cleared within these reticuloendothelial system. Right? We can say phagocytosis, or this in this process they are going to engulf this complex to prevent these oxidative damages. So now there is definitive destruction of this complex led to significant decrease in the haptoglobin level. So in autoimmune hemolytic anemia, haptoglobin represents the most sensitive marker of hemolysis. So now this is very important investigation for you people in case of hemolytic anemia, that is haptoglobin. Haptoglobin level get definitive decrease in case of hemolytic anemia, and we can measure this haptoglobin level by either electrophoretic immunodiffusion technology or nephrolometry techniques. Third marker, that is LDH, lactate dehydrogenase. And now this is the enzyme converts catalyze the conversion of lactate into pyruvic acid, a very important enzyme in glycolysis, located in the cytoplasm and distributed in the various organs. We all know all the things. Now in case of hemolytic conditions, this LDH1 as well as 2 get increased, and they may useful to distinguish extravascular from intravascular. Now this is very important. More increase in, we can say markedly increase in case of intravascular hemolysis. Now this is very important point for you people to remember. This LDH get 4 or 5 fold higher in case of intravascular hemolysis, though it is increase in extravascular hemolysis, but it is mild. But it is severely increased in case of intravascular hemolysis. So that is LDH. Some other constant finding, that is hemoglobinuria, because in case of severe intravascular hemolysis, this hemoglobin excreted de novo, like free Hb is filtered by the glomeruli and into the urine, and sometimes they absorb iron and within the renal tubular cells and again produce hemosiderin. So hemoglobinuria is there and hemosideриnuria is there, so both get excreted through urine. So we can definitely hemocysteine be detected by Prussian blue stain, that is the iron stain. The stain is blue. And hemoglobinuria, once hemoglobin is excited de novo in the urine become red brown color. We can see, I will show the photograph. Now, classification of hemolytic anemia based on site of hemolysis, either extravascular or intravascular. Extravascular, the name itself suggests outside the blood vessels, so it is in the macrophage retronucleoendothelial system, RES. Intravascular, within the circulatory system. So in both the case there is definitive hemolysis is there. Now, first of all, we understand what is extravascular hemolysis. As we all know, this RBC once get destructed within this macrophage, it liberate into heme and globin. Globin is the used in amino acid synthesis. Now, heme, iron, and protoporphyrin converted to bilirubin, that is unconjugated in liver. Conjugation take place. Now, bilirubin, that is get conjugated bilirubin, reach in the intestine, where it is excreted as stercobilinogen and urobilinogen. This is the normal intrahepatic circulation. Now, destruction of RBC within this macrophage, this is known as extravascular hemolysis. Simple, right? So this is the extravascular hemolysis. Now, intravascular hemolysis. Now, this is the capillary endothelium, right? And within this vascular channel, these are the RBCs. They get lysed within this vascular channel. And de novo hemoglobin liberated. So there is methalbumin, and the same way this hemoglobin directly excited through kidney in the form of hemoglobinuria as well as hemosideruria. So whenever you find hemoglobinuria, hemosideruria, think about intravascular hemolysis. It rule out extravascular hemolysis, right? So this is very important findings in case of extravascular versus intravascular. So again, hemoglobin excited in the urine, so it get red to cola colored urine. This is very important thing, red to cola colored urine. And depending upon the hemoglobin, there is change in the pH and methemoglobin, right? So again, this hemoglobin bind with this hemosiderin ion, and they produce hemosiderin. So hemosideruria is also there. So hemoglobinuria, hemosideruria, think about intravascular hemolysis. So laboratory features of intravascular hemolysis, as we discussed earlier: hemoglobinuria, hemosideruria, and hemoglobinemia. So hemoglobinemia within the plasma, and methylbuminemia, that is detected by Schwann's test. We will discuss all these things in detail in respective lectures. Now this is the photograph showing hemoglobinuria. This is the dark color urine, typical of intravascular hemolysis in case of hemoglobinuria, and this is normal color urine. So this is for your comparison, this is normal urine and this is hemoglobinuria. So summary: to differentiate extravascular from intravascular, hematological findings are quite common. So polychromasia in both the case, increased retic count, and erythroid in bone marrow. So hematological parameters are quite parallel. But in case of plasma, both have unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, but the differentiating point is haptoglobin quite absent. We can say markedly decrease in case of this intravascular hemolysis, and it is slight decrease in case of extravascular. LDH much higher in case of intravascular hemolysis. Here it is variable in case of extravascular. So two important point: haptoglobin, LDH. Haptoglobin markedly decrease in case of intravascular, and LDH markedly increase in case of intravascular. So these two differentiating point is very important biochemical marker to differentiate extravascular hemolysis from intravascular hemolysis. And one more thing, urine hemoglobin level and urine hemosiderin level. As we have discussed earlier, hemoglobinuria, hemosideruria, constant finding of intravascular hemolysis. So these four red color markers are suggestive intravascular hemolysis. So you can differentiate extravascular for intravascular, and by this differentiation, we treat the underlying cause. So that is the first difference based on site of hemolysis, either extravascular or intravascular. Second classification of hemolytic is intrinsic defect or extrinsic defect. Intrinsic defect means there is structural and functional defect within the RBC, like it is kind of hereditary defect. we can say thalassemia, sickle cell anemia. These are the hereditary structural defect. Intrinsic defect, we can say intracorpuscular defect. And extrinsic defect, that is extracorpuscular, like in RBC membrane abnormalities or in enzymatic abnormalities, that is extrinsic defect. Now, inherited or acquired hemolytic anemia. Inherited hemolytic anemia are usually, we have discussed in this slide, intrinsic defect, inherited hemolytic anemia, and any extrinsic defect, acquired hemolytic anemia. But there is two exception is that one is PNA, that is paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinemia. Though it is having intrinsic defect, it is acquired hemolytic anemia, right? And G6PD deficiency, though it has some external stimuli triggers like primaquine kind of drugs, it should be grouped under acquired, but it is inherited hemolytic anemia, because G6PD deficiency is inherited hemolytic anemia. So these are the two exceptions, and this is the third classification, either hereditary or acquired. So now broad classification is given in Robbins. Hereditary hemolytic anemia, defect in the RBC membrane. The diseases are hereditary spherocytosis, hereditary elliptocytosis, hereditary stomatocytosis, and acanthocytosis. So for anemia in case of RBC membrane defect, globin synthesis defect, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia. Enzyme deficiency, pyruvate kinase deficiency, hexokinase deficiency. These are the two glycolytic enzyme deficiency. There is pentose phosphate pathway enzyme deficiency as in case of G6PD deficiency, and enzyme deficiency of nucleotide metabolism as in case of pyrimidine nucleotidase deficiency. So this is the hemolytic anemia of hereditary origin. Start from RBC membrane, grouped under spherocytosis, erythrocytosis, stomatocytosis, acanthocytosis. These are the different steps of RBC and produce the hereditary disease. Globin synthesis defect, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, and various enzymopathies. These are grouped under hereditary hemolytic anemia. This is very important theory questions. They may ask long questions like classify various hemolytic anemias and differentiate intravascular for extravascular. Sometimes they will ask classify hemolytic anemia and discuss autoimmune hemolytic anemia in detail. So these are the three questions they are going to ask. And sometimes there is short note of hereditary spherocytosis, and sometimes they may ask a G6PD deficiency. Thalassemia and sickle cell separate lecture. We will have a separate lecture in upcoming schedule. So second group, that is acquired hemolytic anemia. Again, immunohemolytic anemia, first group, that grouped under autoimmune hemolytic anemia and hemolytic disease of newborn. These two are acquired hemolytic anemia. Autoimmune hemolytic anemia means due to either due to warm antibody or due to cold antibody, there is autoimmune process. If if cold antibody is there, it is known as cold agglutinin disease, and the example is PCA, that is paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. And second is hemolytic disease of the newborn, HDN. We can say that is erythroblastosis fetalis kind of conditions also there. Second is fragmentation syndrome, as we have discussed in the first flowchart, mainly three: HUS, TTP, and DIC. Third one, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. It is grouped under acquired hemolytic anemia, but there is some intrinsic defect. Now certain drugs and chemicals are there, they will produce hemolysis, thermal injury, burn, certain infection, particularly Clostridium infection produce hemolytic anemia. Very important MCQ. The only bacterial infection, Clostridium, some other non-specific like Bartonella, cholera also produce hemolysis, and vitamin E deficiency again produce hemolysis. So these are the classification of acquired hemolytic anemia. So we will discuss hereditary hemolytic anemia, particularly spherocytosis, elliptocytosis, G6PD deficiency, and then we discuss autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Because rest of the anemias we will have separate lecture. So we start with hereditary spherocytosis. Usually it is autosomal dominant disorder, deficiency of beta spectrin or ankyrin. This is the one kind of beta chain with this structure of RBC membrane, beta spectrin and ankyrin. Whenever there is deficiency, there is loss of this membrane in the splenic reticuloendothelial systems, and RBC becomes spherical and they get destructed in the spleen. So there is ongoing hemolysis is there, and this is spherocytic RBC. So this is the ankyrin protein and this is spectrin protein. So whenever there is deficiency of this chain, right, ankyrin spectrin, This is the RBC membrane structure. This is band 3, this is glycophorin C. Whenever there is deficiency of this enzyme, there is structural abnormalities, and that will produce RBC to become spherocytic, and they get destructed within the macrophages. So usually asymptomatic, some kind of mild hemolysis is there, but still there is splenomegaly and pigmented gallstone in 50% cases have been documented. Complications in case of hemolytic crisis, it is associated with infection, and aplastic crisis associated with parvo 19 infection. So two complication is there, hemolytic and aplastic crisis. Now peripheral smear examination, usually no anemia, varying degree of polychromatic RBCs is there, and most of the hereditary spherocytosis are uniform in size and density. But important and constant finding is increased MCHC. A very important finding in hemolytic anemia. This is hereditary spherocytosis. Once you find increased MCHC, bone marrow erythrodyplplasia, normal blast are there, but not necessary for diagnosis, because these are again a non-specific finding of every hemolytic anemia. So this is normal RBC, this is spherocytes, right? So there is no pallor at all. So you can see this is spherocyte, this is spherocyte, these all are spherocytic RBCs is there, right? So no pallor, and that is full of hemoglobinized, right? So dense RBC without any central pallor. So this is how you will find hereditary spherocytosis on peripheral blood picture. Osmotic fragility is the diagnostic test that get increased in case of hemolytic anemia. You can see there is shift to right curve. This is normal curve and this is curve of hereditary spherocytosis. So shift to left, osmotic fragility. RBC become osmotically fragile. Treatment again, blood transfusion in case of severe crisis, otherwise splenectomy, or we can give folic acid as a prophylactic. Second group, that is hereditary elliptocytosis, and here the deficiency of RBC membrane protein is spectrin and protein 4.1. The management and all the things are similar to spherocytes, but here RBC become elliptic. So elliptocytic RBC is there. Again autosomal dominant, sometimes autosomal recessive, usually asymptomatic. Now you can see these are the elliptocytes. These two, most of here it is more than 80% cells are elliptocytes, right? But the elliptocytes, these are the elliptocytic RBCs. Now you have to differentiate elliptocytes from sickle cell, because both have fully hemoglobinized structure. But in case of elliptocyte, if you markedly observe, these end are quite blunted, right? These both pole are quite blunted. Here you can see these are the blunted end, and in case of sickle cell it is tapering end, we can say sickled end. And in case of elliptocytes there is some pallor is there, but in case of sickle cell RBCs you can see it is fully hemoglobinized and such kind of tapering end. So you have to differentiate this elliptocytes from sickle cell RBCs. So now move towards the next topic, and this is Howell Jolly body, and this is polychromatic RBCs, and this is erythroblast, and this is target cell. So next topic, that is G6PD deficiency. It is very important enzyme in HMP shunt. Usually NADPH, that is useful for protection against oxidative stress or damage. These enzymopathy are common 10% world population. This offers protection against malaria, and it is X-linked disorders. This is the normal pathway. Usually what happen? This NADP, they are converted to NADPH. Now this NADPH is protective. How? Because it converts this oxidized form of glutathione to reduced form of glutathione through this NADPH. But whenever there is deficiency of G6PD enzymes, like whenever there is deficiency of this enzyme, this conversion not happen. So NADP doesn't convert it to NADPH. So once there is deficiency of NADPH, this oxidized form doesn't convert it to reduced form. So now this oxidized glutathione produce oxidative damage in the form of Heinz body and RBC membrane damage, and that is produce hemolysis. So now this is how G6PD deficiency produce hemolysis. Again I repeat, this is the normal conversion, glucose 6-phosphate converted to 6-phosphogluconate by this enzyme, that is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. At the same time it is produced NADPH. Now this NADPH convert oxidized glutathione to reduced glutathione. Whenever there is deficiency of this G6PD enzyme, won't convert to NADPH. Now, once there is deficiency of NADPH, more and more oxidized glutathione is accumulated and they produce oxidative damage and thus produce hemolysis. So, this is the flow chart of G6PD deficiency. Clinical feature again, fava beans. So, this is the kind of food that produce reactive oxygen species. Some drug history is there like fluoroquinolone, some sulfonamides drugs, primaquines, and they will produce acute hemolysis like primaquine, chloroquine, antibacterial like sulfamethoxone, sulfacetamide, some aspirin like drug, and they are produce hemolysis. So always think about or rule out G6PD deficiency before prescribing such drugs. This is very important clinical practice. Investigations again, usually they are non-spherocytic intravascular hemolysis. Constant finding is bite cell and blisters around peripheral smear. This is MCQ, and G6PD level get decreased. See, this is the hands body, right? Uh, these are blackish dots within the RBC. These are hands body. And now this is polychromatic picture, fragmented RBCs and bite cell is there. This is typical bite cell, right? This is bite cell, just like we bite something, right? So this is the characteristic of G6PD deficiency. These are the laboratory findings of G6PD deficiency. So that's all about three main hereditary disorders and very important test, that is NADPH fluorescence spot test. Just remember the name. Whenever there is deficiency of this enzyme, because of this deficiency is unable to produce sufficient NADPH and this is produce lack of fluorescence. So lack of fluorescence suggests G6PD deficiency. So this is the diagnostic test, again MCQ or Viva question. Treatment: stop prescribing such drugs and transfusion as and when required. Next, hereditary stomatocytosis. Again, whenever you stem stomatocytosis, it should be more than 30% stomatocytes out of 100 RBCs, because usually less than 5% are normally present. And what happened in RBCs? RBC with central slit like pallor, it is stomatocytes. I will show the photograph. It is hereditary and acquired. Acquired in case of alcoholism or some drug-induced anemia. There is acquired stomatocytes. Hereditary is very important. Autosomal dominant deficiency of stomatin protein. So far we have learned spherocytosis. There is deficiency of protein, elliptocytosis, and now stomatocytosis. And very important thing, there is cell swelling, because absence of this protein stomatin, that increase permeability both sodium and potassium and thus in turn lead to increased water content within the cells, and these are the stomatocytes, thus such kind of central slit like area, right? These are the stomatocytes. So mild to moderate hemolysis is there, intermittent jaundice, splenomegaly, retic is slightly higher, MCV get higher but MCH get reduced, again increased osmotic fragility. So these are the findings of hereditary stomatocytosis. One more group of hereditary disease, that is acanthocytosis. Again, RBCs with thorny horn kind of spike like projection on the surface of RBCs. And most important cause is A beta lipoproteinemia. Certain disorders like liver disease, hypothyroidism, there is acanthocytes is there. So you can observe these acanthocytes, such kind of hair speculation. See, these are the acanthocytes. So mild to moderate hemolysis is there, slight increase reticulocytes, and peripheral smear you find such kind of spur cells. This is a finding of acanthocytosis. So far we have learned about 4 hereditary hemolytic anemia. Now we switch over to autoimmune anemia. This is the last topic of our today's lecture. Autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So whenever there is RBC destruction due to RBC autoantibodies, either IgG or IgM. Most common classification: warm autoimmune and cold autoimmune. Warm autoimmune, there is antibody binds at 37 degrees centigrade, cold antibody binds at 4 degrees centigrade. So warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia, warm we can say IgG type of antibody is the G stand for hot, garam. So G stands for warm. So warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia, there is IgG type of antibody and that binds at 37 degree. More common in female, 50% idiopathic. Few secondary causes like in case of chronic lymphocytic leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma, some connective tissue disorders like SLE, rheumatoid arthritis. So these are the group of disorders that produce warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So whenever there is increased temperature, we can say 37-degree temperature, there is hemolysis. In cold environment there is no hemolysis, and this hemolysis due to IgG. So mechanism of destruction extravascular. Whenever you think about this warm antibody, it is extravascular, so within splenic macrophage. So you can see such kind of hemolytic which are almost constant polychromatic RBCs, NRBCs, and you can say spherocytes are also there. Few macrocytic RBCs are also there. Few fragmented RBCs are there. And test to detect this kind of hemolytic anemia, it is direct cum test, that is direct endoglobulin test. What happened, these are the RBCs with such kind of incomplete antibodies attached on the surface of RBC, and on at 37 degree they get activated and produce clump. So what we have to add, this is anti-human globulin, that is we can say Coombs reagent. So when you once you mix up this reagent, you will find such kind of bridge in between these incomplete antibody, and you will find such kind of pentavalent structure. This is suggest positive direct cum test, suggestive of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So constant finding is evidence of hemolysis, peripheral smear, microspherocytosis, NRBCs, and confirmatory test cum test. Treatment against underlying cause, we have to treat, give steroids, splenectomy, and go for some immunosuppressive drugs. Second group, cold type of autoimmune and hemolytic anemia, particularly IgM type of agglutinin is there, and it is at 4-degree temperature. It cold environment, right? Usually, chronic disorders, they have this kind of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. The feature is again, it is associated with acrocyanosis. We can say in associated with Reynolds phenomenon, in cold, painful conditions. A cold environment, there is painful and bluish extremities is there, particularly fingers and toes. And such kind of elderly patients have IgM type of hemolysis, and it is usually intravascular. Warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia was extravascular. Here it is intravascular hemolysis, and extravascular is very less extent. Again, investigation peripheral smear shows microspherocytosis, evidence of hemolysis, Coombs test positive. All three are common. The important finding, differentiating finding is Reynolds phenomenon. So vascular occlusion in cold agglutinin diseases. So such kind of things are going on in case of autoimmune hemolytic anemia, either warm antibody or cold antibody. Treatment again, treat underlying cause, keep extremity warm, steroids and blood transfusion as and when required. So that's all about acquired autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Some non-immune acquired hemolytic anemia, that is we can say microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, that is DIC, this TTP, HUS. Some thermal injuries there like burns, you will find non-immune acquired hemolytic anemia. March hemoglobinemia, so red cell damage in the capillaries of feet on the soldiers on march. And mechanical heart valves, there is produce shear stress damage to the RBC. So these are the mechanical trauma, and that is produce acquired hemolytic anemia, but it is non-immune. Second thing, infection is as in case of malaria, you will find black water fever, that is again sign of intravascular hemolysis. Clostridium infection, again intravascular hemolysis. Certain chemical drugs, this kind of Debzone, sulfasalazine nitrate, they all produce oxidative denaturation of the hemoglobin and produce hemolysis. So these are the acquired cause of hemolysis. So that's all about our today's topic, that is classification of hemolytic anemia and laboratory diagnosis of hemolytic anemia. Now only two diseases are left, one is thalassemia and second is sickle cell anemia. So we are not going to discuss these two disorders in today's lecture, because we will have separate lecture of thalassemia and sickle cell anemia. Just few things regarding laboratory diagnosis, because this is grouped under hemolytic anemia. So in thalassemia, important thing is peripheral blood smear. If thal minor is there, you will find nervoblast, fragmented RBCs, polychromatic RBCs, everything is there. Basophilic stippling is again a constant finding, anisopoikilocytosis. These are the we can say peripheral smear finding of thalassemia. So again, one important finding in thalassemia is peripheral smear. Bone marrow examination, acid diffusion test, you will find ghost cell. You will have a separate lecture, so I'm not going to discuss. Now HB electrophoresis is a very important thing, and you can say there are different length. This is the sickle cell graph. This is the we can say normal thing, and this is the thel minor. This is line 3 where you will find fetal hemoglobin. So this is HB electrophoresis graph. We are not going to discuss. And last thing, that is HPLC. So whenever there is thalassemia, this is in case of thalassemia major, you will find more HbF and very low HbO2 and slight HbA. In case of thel minor, you will have more HbA, almost more than 90%, but few HbA2, that is greater than 2.5, and very little HbF. So this is thel minor, this is thel major. So based on HPLC, you will definitely produce diagnosis of thalassemia as well as sickle cell anemia. One more test, that is Nestrop test, that is neck eye single test tube red cell osmotic fragility test. You have to produce 0.36 buffered saline and pour RBC samples on it. And if there is osmotic fragility is there, once in case of thel minor, there is hemolysis is there, and that is the line below the test tube get invisible. That is Nestrop test. You will have a separate discussion in respective lecture, so I'm not going to discuss all these things. And last, that is sickle cell anemia. Again, the diagnosis of sickle cell anemia, this is the mechanism: glutamic acid replaced by valine at the 6th amino acid position of beta globin chain, RBC becomes sickle cell. Now laboratory diagnosis, again HB sickle cell anemia, it is 5 to 10. In sickle cell trait, we can say just like thel minor, that is heterozygous trait, there is hemoglobin 10 to 13. Total count elevated, shift to left, particularly more neutrophilic, or we can say band cell kind of things. Platelet get increased and ESR low. This is very important finding in sickle cell anemia. ESR get lowered. Again, on peripheral smear, polychromasia, normoblast, Howell Jolly body, but important thing is sickle cell RBCs, right? So this is about sickle cell anemia. And constant, and we can say important diagnostic finding is again, apart from this reticulocyte, bilirubin level, LDH all get increased because these are the hemolytic things. But important thing is sickling test, solubility test. You have to describe this test, but final diagnosis based on electrophoresis, or we can say on HPLC you will find a sickle band. So that's all about all hemolytic anemia. Today we have discussed all hemolytic anemia, classify it and discuss generalized hemolytic anemia. So that's all about our today's lecture, and if you find any query, feel free to ask me at any time. Thank you very much.